to this April 2025 Advocates Network meeting. Everyone, as always, please in the chat, share your name, personal pronouns, what city you're zooming in from, and your organization or school. My example is right there at the bottom of the screen. Ben Robinson, he, him, Denver, Great Education, Colorado. Great Education Colorado's vision: through public education, every Colorado student, regardless of their zip code, learning needs, language, identities, or the color of their skin, graduates prepared to lead their best life. And to go along with that, our mission: Great Education Colorado harnesses the power of grassroots activism and diverse, inclusive networks to guarantee that public schools in every Colorado community are welcoming and adequately, equitably, and sustainably funded. Okay. Our goal, as always, for Advocates Network is to create a space for us to build community and take action together. I think this is like our fourth year of doing it or something like that. I think we've been doing a pretty good job so far, and I'm happy to see all of you coming back and hopefully enjoying what you're doing here. As always, Advocates Network meets the second Tuesday of every month from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Delana, if you wouldn't mind dropping the registration link for May, not March, as it says there on the screen in the chat, and you all can get a head start on registering for next month. And our community commitments. So our first one, move up, move back. We all have great things to say here, and everybody's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of good opinions, but we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. So please keep your remarks, fairly brief and to the point, to ensure that others get to make theirs as well. Number two, no one knows everything, but together we know a lot. Let's learn together. All of us on this call were once students. Some of us were teachers, policymakers. Some of us work in policy currently, organizers, whatever it is. The point is that we all bring unique perspectives to this space, and we want to honor those and work together to learn more about all of these issues that we talk about. Third, and finally, presuming positive intent, but acknowledging our impact. If for some reason there is a disagreement or somebody says something that offends another person or that they don't like, our expectation here is that we get over those things quickly and cordially so that we can go on with our business. All right. So today we're going to go back to sort of an old format, our listen, learn, lead format. Well, we're going to at least do the listen part of it. But before that, I'm just going to go ahead and recap a little bit of what's going on at the state level, what we talked about last time, and then we can go ahead and dive into this question here. So since the last time we met, and we'll talk more in detail about this later, we wanted to get some interim committees going. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of a bill that went through the legislature that prevented that from happening. And at the national level, we saw that executive disorder, aimed at dismantling the Department of Education, and then some previous things that the Trump administration had done that have made it harder for states to provide for all students, and most especially their most vulnerable students. So we don't have a ton of power to change what the national government has. We might not have any power to change what the national government has except through, the next election. But the question here is, how can Colorado be a beacon of hope for public education during these tough times? You can approach that in a number of different ways, I think, whether it's through policy, whether it's sort of more of like moral and values thing, and we're talking to our neighbors, sort of like Jerry said earlier about gardening, but maybe in a different context. So I want you to think about that for a couple minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and have a discussion. And since we don't have a ton of people here tonight, we're just going to do a discussion in a big group here. So I'm going to leave this up for a second just so you can go over it, look at it, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other and we'll discuss the question. All right. Now that you've all had a minute to look at that question and chew on it, who wants to go first? So how can we as a state be a beacon of hope in all of this turmoil, all of this stuff that's going on, both at our state level and also at the national level?
I'll jump in first.
Hmm.
I'm thinking I'm listening to the comments at my school board meetings, and the adults get up there and they're pretty divided. You know, Moms for Liberty, and then the sane people. Um, but when you hear most of the kids, most of the students, they're living it, and they come in with really good comments. And if we have a way to harness that and say, this is what the kids in Colorado, I mean, there are a few that have come up and said, "Oh, we like getting rid of the DEI and stuff like that." But if we've got kids that come up and we actually listen to our kids rather than solely the adults, I think that would be a good thing.
Good. I like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
I have an example just from this past weekend on the national level. A group of us from Colorado presented a workshop at the Network for Public Education. And we did a workshop on how Colorado defeated the voucher amendment, Amendment 80. And I think that we continue to share our successes with others, and it gives them hope. And by that means, it also gives us some more hope that we did it, we worked together successfully, and we were a beacon in the voucher issue, and we can continue to do that.
Great. Thank you, Evie. Barb?
Well, now that we're kind of on that path, I think the fact that we got the adequacy studies done and we have a framework for what we know we should, what we should fund schools for and how we should fund them, that, we can move forward with a great deal of confidence that we know what we're doing and we can provide leadership and a model for others.
Great. I like that. I think that's something that we've, kind of struggled with in the past too. And it's good to have that under our belts, just for experience. But also those actual pieces of legislation, or those studies rather are really important to have as well, because they are actionable. And because they validate what we've been saying for a really, really long time, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I couldn't see your other hand up first, so I'll go Dawn and then Jerry.
The bills that have been coming out of the legislature the last week or so, I've appreciated, particularly 1312, which will make it so that, in the school context, that like there won't be gendered dress codes. There's also an immigration bill that's being debated. I think it's in committee right now, that will offer more protections. And so I just really appreciate that. It seems like the legislature, at least, isn't complying in advance with some of these anti-immigrant, anti-DEI things.
Yeah, and it seems like, I think you're absolutely right, Don, and it seems like a lot of these things that a lot of us tend to agree with and support are coming up all at once, which is really cool. And also not surprising, right? Because of the threats that people are facing throughout our state, and the fact that, that everyone really is facing some kind of threat from, the national administration right now. Jerry?
I think, we're lucky right now. We have a fairly friendly legislature, but I think the fact that educators and community members banded together a few weeks ago, and we had that massive rally at the Capitol that really made a difference and went from a cutting 250 million to increasing by 150 million. it's a drop in the bucket, but it's better than nothing, that you can show other states that if you get together and really show the impact that we're all voters and we're paying attention to what's going on down there at the Capitol, we can have an impact. The other thing I'm thinking is sometimes it helps to be a bit subversive if you have a school board that's willing to do it, so that maybe you don't have to necessarily eliminate DEI, but you change the names of it somehow. Do the same work, but you call it something else.
That's great. And
Yeah.
like, we've heard about those kinds of types of resistance. Like I've heard about them in other states. But have you, Jerry, I guess, have you heard of any of those specific kinds of resistance, more subversive things in Colorado?
Yes. I don't know if I can out Boulder Valley, but they have, they sent the memo they got from the Department of Education about cutting it, and they basically told the individual schools, come up with some creative names. So every school has something different. But we're not doing DEI.
No.
Well, if all they say is we have to look for, these 9 words or something like that, and you don't have them there, then
Mhm.
Yeah.
seems like a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah. And again, luckily we're in sort of a friendly community as far as that goes. But the more communities that can do it, we can get Denver and maybe Aurora and Adams 12 and some of these other districts. We're impacting a lot of students and communities.
Great. Cool. Since we have a small group, I'd love to hear from some other people tonight. Again, the question was, let me get this real quick. How can Colorado be a beacon of hope for public education during these tough times? You can read that in a few different ways, like I said earlier, and respond to it in a few different ways, but I'd love to know what others think. And Kathy said in the chat here, I love that type of creativity. Jerry, thanks.
This is Kathy.
Mhm.
At the hands-off rally on Saturday in Fort Collins, I loved the signs that I saw, basically saying in many different ways, hands off our education. And it was younger people, many times, that were carrying those signs, so that was very hopeful.
Great. Others, anyone who hasn't talked who wants to say how they feel on this question?
I'll just comment on what Jerry said. I love that idea of just using different words, but in a district like mine, we're on the precipice. We're going the dark side. And I wonder if principals have the wherewithal or the courage to do something in their school itself rather than call themselves out to the district. It's gonna be tough.
It is tough. And, hopefully maybe you have a few administrators that have the, what's to ask for forgiveness if they get found out. But I think if you get really creative, you can do this kind of work without using those signal words.
Well, there was that teacher that just said everybody's welcome here and got that shut down. I mean, tell me that that's not as broad as you can get, but it's whether they're looking for you or not, you know?
Yeah, I know it's a challenge.
Great. Anybody else before we move on? I think this has been great, and hopefully we can carry a lot of these things forward. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you all. So for the past, how long has it been? A few months now, at least. We have been in the middle of this thing called the Get It Done campaign, where we're looking to take the recommendations of the adequacy studies. So those two different studies that came out earlier this year, and get the legislature to act on them eventually, right? So the original plan was over the next 2 years. That's still the plan. In the interim, some things have changed. So we talked a little bit earlier about, or I mentioned a little bit earlier about SB 25199, which was that pesky, stupid, silly Senate bill that came up and basically blocked the establishment of new interim committees and also the funding of most current interim committees, with the exception of a few. We were originally, our plan was perhaps to privately fund a committee. That did not work out, unfortunately, so we're on a new path now. But the end goal is still the same, right? It's to get the legislature to take actionable steps on this thing that we're calling the Blueprint for Public Education, Colorado's Blueprint for Public Education, which is just a plan to enact the recommendations of the adequacy study for each district in Colorado. Remember that this is the first time that we have seen a plan like this spell out what each district in Colorado needs, right? And our point right now is that we cannot afford to waste the $2 million that it took to conduct these studies, especially that because the legislature was the body that sanctioned these studies in the first place, right? So it'd be a very silly thing, a very unfortunate thing for that to happen. So we are still pressing on. So tonight we're going to talk more about where we are with that, where we're going, and then our advocacy day, which we hope will be kind of the bridge between where we are and where we want to be going forward. Evie.
So I was listening to the hearing on 1320, the school finance bill, and there was an amendment that was something like, if funding drops below something or other, like Amendment 23, blah, 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 that there would be an interim committee or a committee formed. So I was only sort of listening and never went and looked at the actual amendments that were passed. Are you familiar with that one? And could that be a piece of what we're asking for?
Unfortunately, Evie, I'm not familiar with it. Lisa was there. Were you listening today, or was that yesterday?
Yesterday.
Okay, yeah, I know Tracy Rainey and Lisa were there yesterday listening. I was not. And I think actually Lisa was on a different bill. So I am not quite sure, but that sounds like something we should definitely look into. Thank you for alerting us. All right, so let's go ahead and just sort of remind ourselves of where we are. So I think pretty much everybody on this call has seen this before. The first place we started out was preparing for the adequacy studies release. And then this sort of building local teams thing, which took us in a couple different directions, but we are satisfied with what we have right now. And then legislature 2025, that third bullet there. So advocate for an interim committee to create a Colorado blueprint for student success. Which is really sort of where we are still right now, but that's where we expect it to be. All of this stuff on here goes through the end, or goes through 2026, right? As you can see at the bottom here. So the fact that we're not past that halfway point right now, if it looks visually scary, is just fine. But as I mentioned, we are taking a slight pivot, slight change of direction. Our original plan was to establish an interim committee on the recommendation to discuss and implement the recommendations. Our new plan, because of SB 25199, which prohibited the establishment of interim committees and stopped funding some of the extant ones, is now basically what is a formal affirmation that the legislature is working to implement this stuff. And accompanying that is a less formal interim committee, which we don't know all the details of yet, but we are hoping that it is at least a little bit bipartisan. So what does that formal affirmation look like? And here you can just see this is sort of the flow of where we're going. And right here, April 2025 is where we are right now. Advocacy Day resolution introduced and passed. That's what we're going to talk about now. So the Senate came out with a joint resolution, which is basically just a very long statement, in acknowledging a problem and a statement also of intent with a lot of whereas clauses. But the important thing about this is that Senator Kipp is going to read this on the floor, and it is going to go up for a vote. Basically, a vote of approval of this on the day of our advocacy day, so on April 16th. And this is a resolution that Lisa, who unfortunately cannot be on the call tonight, was instrumental in writing. So it's a really cool thing for us, in part because of that. So what is the purpose of this joint resolution, of a joint resolution in general? So a resolution is an expression of opinion of the legislature, right? Whereas a bill that is passed into law is something official and something that is binding. A resolution is not, but it can be thought of kind of as a statement of intent and a roadmap to policy or some policies, right? This one in particular expresses a commitment to public education under attack. It puts the adequacy studies front and center, right? This acknowledges both adequacy studies and talks at length about the recommendations, provides a starting point for future action and legislation, and infirms senators' intentions to learn more about and to act on the recommendations of these studies. And that's perhaps the most important part of this. Delana, would you mind dropping that link into the chat just so folks have access to it if they'd like to read it? All right. So where does that leave us now? We have a resolution. We're going to have a less formal interim committee. And the next step really is to show that people care about this stuff, right? And one way in which we can do that is by showing up at the Capitol for an advocacy day. A lot of organizations call these lobby days. We've had them in the past where we bring a group of advocates to the Capitol. They meet with their legislators, talk about this stuff. They maybe pull legislators off the floor with cards, and they learn more about how this process works in general. And that's exactly what we want from this. We want folks to come away with an understanding of what's going on exactly with this resolution, and also what could be going on in the future as we pursue this more. We want them to be able to meet with their legislators or legislative aides if possible. All right. So when is this happening? Advocacy Day is on April 16th, so that's next Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Thank you to those of you on the call who have already signed up. That's awesome. We would love for more of you, if not all of you on this call, to sign up. That would be even better. Where is it? It's at the First Baptist Church in Denver, Colorado, which is right across from the Capitol. If you've done a lobby day or an advocacy day before, you may have spent some time in the basement of that building. It's very popular for things like this. Well, one of the cool things about this advocacy day in particular is that the first 25 advocates will be guests on the Senate floor, standing beside Senator Kathy Kipp as she reads this joint resolution before it is voted on. So it's a chance for us to show our actual presence there, and to show that there are people who care about this, and that it's not just something that has come out of the legislature or that has been drummed up by some interest, but that this is really a grassroots concern, a concern about the students and teachers of the state. Okay, a little bit more about the day. We're sort of breaking it up into two pieces. We have an orientation piece and we have a capital piece. The reading of the bill is going to be a bit earlier on in the day. We're thinking 9:10, something like that. So we're going to meet at the church in the morning, head over to the Capitol, hear the reading of the bill, have our pictures taken, those kinds of things. And then we're going to come back to the church for what we're just calling a quick orientation. So we're going to go over some advocacy strategies. We're going to listen to presentation from CFI about TABOR and how it's currently affecting what's going on in Colorado. Grade Ed's going to talk a little bit more about the fiscal landscape. And then we're going to talk to folks about setting up meetings with legislators, how that works, and then also building teams within our own school districts, Senate districts, House districts, whatever it is, so that we can keep this advocacy grounded and alive. All right. And then at Capitol, we're going to have some of our advocates help with giving tours, meeting with legislators. And then obviously we're going to be attending that joint resolution reading. Now, if we have more than 25 people for that joint resolution, some of those people are going to be on the floor. 25 up to 25 will be on the floor with Senator Kipp, and then the rest of them will be watching from the balcony. Okay. Any questions so far? Jerry.
It's not a question really. So CEA retired, had a lobby day two weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And of course, those of us that went down really emphasized the adequacy study and met with legislators. So some of us may not come down to this one because we've already done this, but at least I could say that the legislators that represent most of Boulder County and parts of the southern part of Larimer County were very, very positive. So that was really nice. And for those of you who will do this, a lot of times if you call ahead to your legislator, they will set up a meeting with you so that you don't have to sit out there in the crowd outside the legislative entrance and try to talk amongst the craziness there. We actually had 4 legislators set up a meeting in a room, and it was really nice. And we were able to talk, and it was quiet. So it's a recommendation.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Jerry. And I think we are leaning that way. That we've instructed a few folks who have expressed interest to do that. So hopefully that we get some meetings from it. But yeah, thank you very much, and also thanks for telling us that it's been met with a positive reception. That's really cool, and also good for us because we're going to go and reiterate, obviously. Evie?
So I'm just concerned at how long the orientation is going to take before people go to the Capitol, because it is a midweek day, and they usually have a short session on the floor and then go to committee meetings. And I've been in a number of advocacy days where by the time the group got to the Capitol, they weren't on the floor anymore and you missed everything.
Mm-hmm.
So have you accounted for that?
Yeah, so I think our plan, Evie, is to go. So when Senator Kipp reads her bill, we'll be there in the morning at the Capitol, and the plan is to actually go back while they're finishing business. And Lisa just got on; she might be able to talk a little bit more about this too. And then to go back to the Capitol and do tours and whatever it is later. Now, if people have meetings that they want to set up, obviously we can accommodate for that, and we can send people back over with a person like me or Delana or another advocate or something to help get them there. But I think the main the main deal at the Capitol is going to be us being there with Senator Kipp while she reads the bill in that show of support.
Sorry to have missed the first half, but I think that's we really are going to try to do a lot of skill building and information building in the couple of hours that we won't be in the Capitol, and then there's sort of a choose your own adventure. There's the Senate Education Committee is having a hearing on the impact of the possible elimination of the U.S. Department of Education. So that's one thing some people can do. We will work on helping others find their legislator, talk to them about the adequacy study, or set up a meeting where we can do a briefing. Others might just want to get more familiar with the Capitol, and so we have a lot of support from, we've got about 5 volunteers in addition to staff to make sure that we can provide as meaningful a experience as possible. When you know, Senator, you know, Evie, what it's like in late April or mid-April at the Capitol. We know we can't anticipate everything that's going on, and so we are making this as structured but flexible as, you know, really walking that tightrope.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions, comments about Advocacy Day at this point? And Delana, would you mind putting the registration for Advocacy Day in the chat as well, please? Great. Let's go on. Oops. Oh, no. That was supposed to be earlier. We already talked about that. That's okay. That was just that slide. The past slide was just about the resolution that we talked about. So we do have we talked about last time, actually, we had an online action where you could send a customizable email to your legislators, so your House member, your Senate member, asking them to set up a meeting and talk more with you, to learn more from you about the adequacy studies, and also to pledge to do something about it, right? And as I mentioned earlier, or to set up an interim committee, as I mentioned earlier, we're not having interim committees anymore, at least not in the capacity that we wanted to begin with. So we have changed the ask here from please ask your legislator to set up an interim committee and talk with you about that, to ask your legislator to vote yes on the joint resolution. That document we went over earlier, and that you should have in the chat. And it's more brief than it was, so it's shorter, straight to the point, exact same audience, but we need our legislators all over the state to hear from as many of you as possible about this. And it's really, really quick. The email that we have constructed is super simple. If you want to add a personal touch to it, that's awesome. If you want to send it as is, I think it would be effective that way as well. But just make sure that you get this out. You can scan that QR code there. And that you share that link once you have done it, that you share that link with other folks in your family or in your friends, colleagues, whoever it is who needs to hear this message. And yeah, it's just super important that we get this out there now, and that legislators are hearing about this so that we can go into next year, so that we can go into next session and hit the ground running and really work on that blueprint for public education, which again is still our North Star. It's our final goal. That has not changed at all. All that's happened is that our approach to getting there has changed a little bit. Lisa, did you want to add anything there?
No, I think that covers it. Happy to answer any questions, though.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing for a moment, and actually, I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat in case the QR code isn't working for any of y'all. So I guess a question here. We're nearing the end of the legislative session. It's gone really, really fast, as always. And this, I guess, for us, Great Ed doesn't do a ton of stuff in the legislature usually. This year we have done more than we normally do. How's everybody feeling right now? I mean, from where we started to where we are, where our confidence level's at, and I guess sort of how do we keep the spirit alive going forward? I think it seems like we're doing a pretty good job so far. And I've really enjoyed conversation with people on the call tonight. But yeah, Barb.
I was going to say, I think we're doing the best we can. I mean, this is like, you never know when you wake up the next morning, what's going to happen and what you need to do and what the priority is. So I think we're pivoting and, keeping our head on a swivel, as they say, and looking for new opportunities. And, we at least got something going right now. I mean, we're not just sitting still. We're working on something and we got another thing to work on and you know, keep us in the front of minds of all the legislators at this point, legislators at this point.
I think that's right. I think that's a really good way to look at it too, especially because we have been throwing some curveballs lately, and I do think we're you know doing the best we can to stay upright and you know.
I don't know if I have shared this. I'm sure I have at some point with the Advocacy Network, but the Advocates Network, but it's sort of this serenity prayer that we do as an organization to say there are some things that we're not going to be able to control. What happens at the legislature? Who's mad at who? So somebody decides they're not going to take this bill because or that the that we have a $1.2 billion deficit, and you know, so there are things that we can control. We have in the past put things on the ballot when nobody else would, and I am eternally grateful to many people on this call, as a matter of fact, that we did Amendment 73 in 2018. At this point, it's clear a lot of people are looking at the 2016 ballot, 2026 ballot. And a lot of folks with a lot of sway, and we're not going to define what's going to go on the ballot per se. And so that serenity prayer is what can we do? And Barb, it is balm for the heart to hear you say that we're, you know, pivoting and doing what we can, and that because that really is the philosophy of what can we do? We can get people talking about the right things. We can prevent the legislature from walking away from the adequacy studies because it's too hard. We can build our teams locally so that when there is a ballot measure, well, first of all, we can build teams so that when there's discussions about what's going to be on the ballot, we're able to say, these are the resources. This is the amassed power that we bring to it. We have all these people who are ready to do work, and they, you know, what they want is to see it be more bold, or, you know, make sure this much at least is for education. Or so we're building the team so that we have a greater say. And once it's done, we can make things happen, and we can get something on the ballot. We can campaign in a way that is much more effective than television ads and digital ads, by people talking to people and feeling comfortable doing it. And so that really is how we keep our eye on the North Star. And this year we've let our partners in other, like in CASE and CASB and CEA, look at the immediate short term, what's going to be in this School Finance Act. And I think that's been the goal, is what we can to work on what we can control. So all that is to say, thank you, Barb. We need wind in our sails, like comments like that. That is really, really meaningful. Thank you.
All right. Others? Cool. Well, I already saw a few new signups for Advocacy Day, so that's awesome.
Bring
Um,
somebody.
Bring somebody. Bring somebody. Share it if you have if you have a group of people who are particularly interested in this, who you think would benefit from coming to the Capitol. We do have a fair number of spaces left. So although we're gonna limit it at some point, but we do have a fair number of spaces left. So please pass it along to the deadline to sign up, Dawn, is sort of fuzzy at this point. We're just trying to get more people right now. So if we put a hard cap on it and we need to stop, we'll let y'all know. But it should, the next few days, you should be fine to spread it around. Great. We probably we have a bit of a shorter agenda tonight, but we wanted to be able to share all of that with you. Lisa, do you have anything else you'd like to?
Well, I again apologize for not being here in the first half hour. If there's anything else folks want to talk about, TABOR is a hot topic right now. I think probably we touched on it a little bit, but there is a lot of action, and weirdly, I am more optimistic about doing something with TABOR in the next 2 to 5 years than I have been for a long time. So we can talk about that, and if there were any questions from the first part, I think we've established that I talk a lot, which is why we're closer to being done at 5:15 when I wasn't here for the first half hour.
I'd be interested in hearing the latest action on TABOR related.
There are, let's say, 3 main avenues that things are going on. The first is House Joint Resolution 1023, which was heard in House Finance yesterday and passed 7-6. And that is a resolution it would tell the Legislative Council to prepare a complaint that is basically what the Kerr case was, that alleges that the TABOR is unconstitutional under the United States Constitution because we had to guarantee that Colorado would provide a Republican form of government. And the argument was this has been 13 to 15 years ago, I think it was filed, and it went through a lot of first, is it even justiciable? Is it something a court could hear? And then it went into this long phase of standing, and it ended up after a Supreme Court decision in a completely different case, the decision that all the plaintiffs, including our Christy Hargrove, who is on an airplane at the moment, did not have standing. And so the only way to get to this question, which has never been before the court, before any court, what is a Republican form of government? And the argument of this lawsuit that would now be restarted with the plaintiff being the full legislature is that if the legislature is unable to make fiscal policy, then it is not a Republican form of government. The representatives who are sent by the people who vote them in have no ability to meet the needs of the state. On the other side will say that's not necessary, and it's, there'll be all kinds of arguments, most of which have already been briefed. So I believe that Representative Camacho had the sense that he has the votes to make that all the way through. I testified yesterday. Carol Hedges testified yesterday. Ken DeLay, for those of you who know him from when he was the head of CASB, David Skaggs, who was one of the first attorneys on it, was there. And then some people who just came because they're concerned about the impact on services that they or their organization provide. And I also, Carrie Kennedy couldn't be there, but I had the honor of reading her testimony. Evie?
So Joe Salazar posted that he witnessed a Democratic state representative disrespect a former Democratic state representative and former Democratic congressman, that must have been Skaggs, during the committee testimony. And so did you hear that part?
I was on a call about the Get It Done campaign that I had to leave. So I heard them testify, but I didn't hear all the questioning. So I'm not sure what that was. I don't.
Apparently it was Bob Marshall, because if you know Joe Salazar, he doesn't pull any punches. And he said, no need to be a dick, Representative Bob Marshall, just
I guess that makes it
to justify your support for an unconstitutional law. So, so I didn't know who the congressman was. Now I know it's Skaggs.
David Skaggs.
So I'm curious who the state rep was. Maybe it was Chris DeGraw Kennedy? DeGraw
No, he
Kennedy?
didn't testify. It was
In-
either Brad Young possibly,
Ooh,
or I testified with Andy Kerr. It wasn't Andy Kerr. So it must have been Brad Young,
okay.
the only one I can think of.
Wow. I
Brad
don't know
Young
what
was
Marshall said, but sounds
uh
bad.
yeah. Well, it's all on tape. Brad Young was a JBC member, a Republican JBC member, probably 10 years ago now. The other two paths are a couple of bills that will change how certain income revenue is logged so that it is no longer counted against the Tabor cap. And then the last one is a concurrent resolution to put something on the ballot that would delete two parts of Tabor. One would be the one that requires that all income be taxed at the same rate. And the other would be there is language about the legislature can raise taxes with a majority, a super majority in an emergency. But that the line that they would be taking out of it is, but that emergency can't be because it's a budget crisis. So it can't be an economic emergency. It's like, then what is it? So it's been a dead letter because there has been no, if it's not an economic emergency, then what could it be? So it would just delete those two. The likelihood that that gets out of the legislature is slim because it's a constitutional amendment that needs 2/3. And the Democrats, there would need to be a couple of Republicans voting for it. And they are pretty much all locked down on Tabor. There were probably 70 people testifying against the resolution yesterday. All saying it's our money, why don't you trust the voters? And our testimony was nobody is making these decisions. The legislature isn't making the decisions because they can't decide how much to spend and how to get that revenue. And the voters didn't vote for a $1.2 billion cut to the budget this year. They haven't had a chance to vote on anything. And the issue is when everybody has control over the state budget, nobody has control over the state budget. And as Carrie said, we've been on autopilot for 30 years and we'll be on autopilot for another 30 years, not reflecting. And that's what I said, is that for 25 years, I've been working in an organization that has been trying to meet the will of the voters as represented in polls, which is that they all want increased funding for public school, not they all, but the majority of Coloradans want increased funding for public schools, but it hasn't happened. So power to the people, that's not what Tabor does. So people are talking, I mean, I think the big difference is people are talking about it. Go back to Harry Potter and, Dumbledore said you have to say the word Voldemort. Being afraid of saying it means that you can't name it and you can't defeat it. Thanks, Jerry.
Any other questions about Tabor?
I have one thing that I need to say, and that is, I don't know if Ben has said this, but I am going to. This is Ben's last Advocates Network, I am sorry to say, as he has a great job in an area that he has been very interested in for a long time. I'll let him tell you about it.
I won't,
But
they're gonna do their own thing about it, so I'm not gonna say anything more about it, but.
okay, I
yeah.
won't tell you where he's going. But
Yeah.
it has been an honor and a pleasure to work with Ben, and he has kept this Advocates Network going for several years. Then, in addition to so many other, our Great Schools Thriving Communities Coalition, and so I and speak for the whole Great Ed team in saying thank you. We are sorry to see you go, but happy to see you be able to pursue work that has been of great interest to you for a long time. So thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you all. I've enjoyed getting to know all of you. Yeah, it's been a good time, and I hope you all, I know you will all continue to pursue this work when I'm gone. I am not the driving force. But yeah, so thank you all, and I've really enjoyed getting to know everyone here. And I'm sure I will see you around. I won't be too far away.
You won't
So
be too far away.
yeah.
And you'll come to Advocates Network, right? Because you're
He
yes.
will be here every month.
every month.
Only if you lead it, Delana. Otherwise, I don't think so.
So, well, thanks, Ben. He's gone as of 2 days after the Advocates Day. So
Yeah.
be
So my
sure to
last day
come
here
so
is
you
the
can see him in
18th, and
person.
then I will
See
be
him in person.
off for a week and then back somewhere else fairly close by, and you all should know about it soon. All right.
Thank you all.
With that, yeah, I think we're all
Bev,
done
good
with our
get.
agenda. Yeah.
Good get for next week. Better. You traded up. I'm so sorry about that. And Barb, I will see you in a couple of minutes.
And I will be happy to share why you're not able to make it. You got good things going.
Just the
Thank
worst
you.
day. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Everybody.
All right.